Chapter 17. Please advise. The sound of coughing echoed up and down the corridors. All of the grown-ups were now sick. In a heartbeat, our life had changed, or maybe stopped. Like a digireel frozen halfway through a scene. Overnight, it was just up to us kids to take care of the settlement. Cooking, dust duty, repairs, and 100 other things. It was never ending. By some unspoken agreement, Flossie had taken charge. It didn't matter that Albie was older. She knew the most about running the settlement after being Cy's apprentice. And it soon became apparent why he had chosen her first. She was great at organizing. With the same enthusiasm and attention to detail she had when making clothes, she kept the settlement running. She could see the big picture of what needed to be done, and she somehow got us to do the work without fighting. I spent most of my time helping Albie make meals and nurse the grown-ups. Flossie insisted that we clean our hands with a sanitizing spray every time we left one of the grown-ups' bedrooms. She was worried that we would get sick too. I was more worried about my skin. The sanitizing spray was harsh, and I had dry red patches all over my hands from using it. "Take this to Memes," Albie told me, spooning some soup into a bowl. "And when you're done, come and get Cy's. I'll do Darby and Ileana and Salty Bill." The grown-ups were now getting sicker. I'd never seen anyone this ill. Sure, the occasional cold made its way around the settlement, but it was usually just a sore throat and a stuffy nose. "Albie, is it normal for everyone to get sick at the same time?" "I don't think so," he said, and his shoulders drooped. I carried the tray to Memes' room. I could hear her coughing from behind the door. "Memes," I called, "I brought you some lunch." "Come in," she said, her voice a croak. And when I opened the door, I saw that Memes was in bed, with the covers tucked up to her chin. Her short, fuzzy gray hair was slick with sweat, and her face was pale. Memes shivered even though she was under a pile of blankets. Now she seemed fragile, like she could crumple and blow away. "How do you feel?" I asked her. "I think I have a fever again," she said. "Can you give me some more of the painkiller, kitten?" I put the soup down, got the bottle on the table, and shook out 2 tablets. Then I propped her up with pillows and handed her the medicine and water. Our roles were reversed. I was taking care of her like she was a child. She settled back with a sigh. "How are the others doing?" "Well, Ileana's coughing is getting worse," I said, "and Flossie said that Salty Bill is coughing really bad and has a fever too. Same with Cy." "They both have fevers?" I nodded. A puzzled look crossed her face. "This just doesn't seem like dust cough." A blur of fur bounded into the room. Leo. He did a slow patrol of the room, sniffing here and there. "He's hunting for mice," I told Memes. She stared at Leo. "Lice," she whispered. "Leo has lice?" I asked. She drew a deep breath and coughed. "They were stowaways, like the lice." "Who were?" Her eyes met mine. "The mice," she whispered. "It's the mice." While the mouse disease didn't affect us kids, the grown-ups didn't have any resistance to it. But the worst part was knowing that it wasn't aliens or other countries that might have brought danger to our home. It was something from Earth. What if other threats were lurking in the supplies? Was it even safe to eat the food? Had one of the killer weeds Phineas had told me about hopped a ride too? It was terrifying to consider. The days turned into weeks, and we struggled to keep things going. Albie came to bed late every night. Between cooking and taking care of the grown-ups, he barely slept. Tonight was no different. He staggered in and collapsed on his bed, and for a moment he just lay there, staring at the ceiling. "Are you okay?" I asked him. "I'm so tired," he said. "Can you stay with Cy tonight? His fever's really bad." "Sure," I said. "I already gave him medicine. He was asleep a little bit ago. Make him drink water if you can." "Okay." And then he closed his eyes and started snoring. He hadn't even changed into his pajamas. Like Albie, Cy was fast asleep, a low light glowing next to his bed. I touched his forehead. It felt hot. I wandered around looking at the digipics on the wall, and there was Cy as a young boy with an older woman, his mother, standing in front of a house with leafy trees. A teenage version of Cy with his arm around another teenage boy sitting on an Earth car vehicle and grinning at the camera. Another of them as young men in uniform. They were trying to look serious, but Cy was actually cracking a smile. And another the digipic of the two of them wearing fancy black suits. The other man was kissing a woman in a white dress with some kind of net on her head. "Larry," Cy said, his voice anxious. "Where's Larry?" Who was Larry? There was no Larry in the settlement. I went over to him. "Cy? Larry!" he shouted, trying to sit up. I didn't know what to do. It was scary. And then he started coughing so hard that he couldn't breathe. "Cy, you should lie back down," I said. But he wouldn't. He just got more agitated, like Trey when he didn't get his way. "Larry!" he shouted. "Please, Cy." And then his eyes seemed to focus on me. "There you are," he said. "I've been here the whole time." He sagged against the bed. "I've missed you so much, Larry." "It's Belle, Cy," I told him. "Don't you recognize me?" "Promise you'll stay, Larry." My stomach fell. He had no idea who I was. "Promise me," he said. "I'll stay," I said. "Now go to sleep." And I watched his chest rise and fall with each slow breath. The next morning, I stared at my breakfast. I wasn't hungry. I was too shaken by what had happened with Cy. "So he didn't know you at all?" Flossie asked. "Yeah, it was weird. He thought I was somebody named Larry." "Maybe it was the fever," she said, picking up her spoon. Breakfast was basic, algae porridge. It was bland, but it was filling. Meals were something to be eaten in a hurry now, not lingered over. I miss Salty Bill's cooking. And now I knew why he had been the first person Cy recruited. Tasty food definitely helped morale. And our morale needed all the help that it could get. Flossie had dark circles under her eyes. And Albie was wearing the same clothes he'd had on yesterday. Trey sagged in his chair, and even Vera was too tired to be her usual snarky self. "The toilet in the grown-ups wing won't flush," Vera said. "When did that happen?" Flossie asked. "This morning," she said. "God, I swear this place is held together with duct tape," Flossie said. She wasn't wrong. "I'll add it to the list," she said. Albie suddenly burst into tears. We were so startled that we just stared at him. "Albie," I whispered, "what's wrong?" But he continued to sob. "Albie, take a breath," Flossie said in a soothing voice. "Everything's going to be fine." "Everything's not going to be fine," he cried. "We are almost out of pain medicine." "We are?" she asked, her voice sharp. He nodded, his eyes wet with tears. Flossie swallowed, and then Albie pulled his ball cap over his eyes and put his head in his arms and cried. And I wanted to cry too. I helped Flossie put Albie to bed. Vera was waiting for us in the hall when we left the bedroom. "We have to do something," she hissed. "I'm doing everything I can," Flossie protested. "The grown-ups aren't getting any better. We need to send a message to Earth Command and tell them that we need help. We can't handle this anymore. We're just kids." Flossie's eyes brightened. "That's a good idea." Vera threw up her hands in frustration. "Of course it's a good idea. God, I swear I'm the only person on this entire planet that has any sense." Flossie frowned. "I don't know Cy's login password." "It's taped on a piece of paper under the digislate," I told her. Vera looked impressed. "Why, you little snoop." I blushed. I didn't snoop. I just noticed things. "Come on," Vera told me. "Come on, I'll send the transmission." So she and I went up to the core. When she picked up the digislate, his login was there, scribbled on a piece of paper. And it said, my_Larry. Who was this Larry? Was this the same Larry that Cy was talking to during his fever? I helped her log in, and as she wrote the message to command, I looked outside. The storm was still going on, the sky that strange, hazy color. "Done," Vera said, standing up. "I just sent it." I signed Sai's name so they won't think that it's a prank. Now, years ago, the older kids had used Sai's password and sent a message with fart jokes to Earth Command. They hadn't been amused. I didn't think Earth Command had a sense of humor. How long until we hear back from them? I asked. Well, it won't take long to reach Earth, but they'll take hours to figure out what to say. No sense waiting. Okay, I said, staring at the monitor. I'll be down in a minute and do the dishes. They'd been piling up. She nodded and left the room. Then I sat down and logged into Sai's account. I scrolled through Sai's messages with Earth Command. Once I started reading, I couldn't stop. He was worried about everything, from Trey's pimples to the strength of the outside coating of the core. He ended almost every message with the same phrase, please advise. Command always responded the same way. We'll send whatever you need on the next supply ship. And at first that struck me as a little cold, but then I realized that was all they could do. They were too far away to actually help. Like the sun in my bedroom, it was all an illusion. The truth was that we were on our own, and we always had been.